In the dead of night at Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center, a single cry cuts through the chaos. "Guards, don't help me." Revealing a harrowing truth about life behind bars.
Cuffs are usually cuffed at the arm with a waist chain on. So being that he's going to be traveling by himself, he's going to be cuffed and they're going to have a waist chain on him so he can't move his arms too far. So the chain's going to be around his waist. Sometimes it's a belt, sometimes it's a chain, and he's going to have leg irons. So he's not going to be able to run or anything like that. And then they're going to take him to the court, and then they're going to turn him over to the courts there, and then they're going to take everything off and they're going to search him again. Most of the time they will search you again, and then they put you in the cell and wait for the judge to call you up to the courtroom when they're ready for him.
How can a man once celebrated for his larger-than-life presence now find himself vulnerable in a place where violence lurks in every shadow? What hidden dangers force an icon like Sean Diddy Combs to risk everything for a moment of relief, even as his past sins and present enemies converge under one unforgiving roof?
Much fraud. So many of the victims in these crimes don't think they are victims. They don't even consider themselves victims. There are other parts of the definition of sex trafficking where it talks about the abuse of a position of vulnerability, where a vulnerability is taken advantage of because of factors like social circumstances, economic circumstances, being pregnant, being undocumented. Some of it could be in a nightclub, it could be in a brothel. We have done work elsewhere in the world. Some areas brothels are legal and some places they are not. So it could be a brothel, a strip club, definitely at house parties often, where there's a very, very kind of a controlled way of knowing who enters and who doesn't.
I mean, this is the crossover event of the century at the MDC. You have Diddy and Luigi Mangione locked up together. Our sources say that they haven't quite met yet, though they do share a legal team, but that Diddy is absolutely furious that he's been throwing tantrums. And if anything, this just goes to show his inflated ego and how he feels, he has the name Love, that he should be loved and adored. Meanwhile, Luigi allegedly shot someone in cold blood on camera. So to Diddy, he doesn't get it. He's saying, I am innocent, yet you have this guy allegedly on camera killing somebody. How is he being revered as a hero and Diddy's a villain?
Just days ago, under a veil of secrecy, Diddy was quietly escorted from the Metropolitan Detention Center to a Brooklyn hospital. Insiders reveal the transport was deliberately timed after dark to avoid drawing attention from fellow inmates and even some staff. His trip wasn't for an overnight stay, but a swift visit for an MRI to assess his nagging knee pain, a recurring issue for the 55-year-old who has already undergone multiple surgeries. But was this medical checkup merely routine, or a subtle sign of a deeper, more sinister threat lurking within the prison walls?
It was filed on January 30th. Coincidentally, according to the New York Post, that's the same day P. Diddy was taken to a Brooklyn hospital from MDC. MDC is the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. It's where Diddy's been held since his arrest back in September. His team has tried multiple times for bail, but it's always been denied. So that's where Diddy has been for months now, but last week he was taken to the hospital. According to reports from the New York Post, Diddy was transported from MDC in the cover of darkness at about 10 p.m. on January 30th. He was taken to a Brooklyn hospital for an MRI after reporting issues with his knee. This actually isn't the first time we've heard about Diddy's knee either. He's apparently had problems with it since 2003 when he ran the New York Marathon.
So why is Diddy getting raced out in the cover of darkness, we keep hearing? Why does he get the cover of darkness? Why does he get taken out because he needs an aspirin? Help me, Dr. Hendricks.
Well, I'll tell you, each inmate gets a physical within 14 days of their arrival at any facility. And I'm sure, based on reports of him having several knee surgeries throughout the years after being a marathoner back in 2003. So this may have been in the works in terms of getting him out for an MRI, because I know that they don't have that equipment at the institution. And I'll just tell you this, they probably had set this appointment up months, maybe weeks ago, and they set it up for the evening.
To leave at 1 a.m. in the cover of darkness.
Inside these stark walls, the Metropolitan Detention Center is infamous for its brutal environment. Housing over 1,200 inmates, the facility has witnessed a surge in violence, including fatal stabbings and assaults that leave both inmates and staff reeling. A recent interagency sweep uncovered drugs, homemade weapons, and thousands of electronic devices, evidence of a rampant underground network. While federal authorities insist that violence will not be tolerated, the chaos inside often leaves figures like Diddy isolated, with no one coming to his aid when danger strikes.
The conditions of the prison are far from homey, notoriously described as, quote, dreadful, as one judge put it. Some on the bench have even moved away from sending non-violent defendants there. In April, a group of detainees that prosecutors said were MS-13 gang members in court documents stabbed an inmate 44 times in an attack caught on camera. 2 shivs were recovered from the attack. You see them here. The victim survived. And in the last 3 years alone, 4 inmates have died by suicide. And violence is not the only issue. Accusations of medical neglect, staffing shortages, smuggling of drugs, some allegedly facilitated by employees. At least 6 staff members charged with crimes in the last 5 years, according to the AP. Some accused of accepting bribes and providing contraband.
You know, no jail or prison is expected to be a 5-star hotel, we know that, but it's not supposed to be a house of horrors either.
Yeah, the troubled and violent Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn housing Sean Diddy Combs raided by the feds today. They're investigating poor conditions, rampant drug smuggling, mounting violence, and repeated inmate deaths.
Eyewitness News reporter Darla Moss live at the scene in Sunset Park with what's really going on in Darla.
Well, Bill, the Bureau of Prisons will only say this is an interagency operation to maintain a safe environment, but sources tell ABC News that inmates are not the target, and attorneys who've been seeing clients here for years say the timing is very curious.
Whispers among inmates suggest the MRI might not have been solely for knee pain. Rumors swirl that Diddy was recently caught in another violent confrontation, an inmate assault that left him reeling and desperate. Though prison officials downplay such claims, sources close to the case insist this isn't the first time the music mogul has found himself in the crosshairs of unchecked brutality. Nor is it the first time an incident like this has taken place within the notorious MDC.
Unfolded in about 15 seconds. MDC surveillance video shows Isaiah Garcia approach Christopher Byers on the top level of their jail pod with a hand inside his uniform. Garcia uses that same hand to stab Byers more than 20 times with a broken off top of a mop or broom handle he reportedly sharpened to use as a shank. Another camera angle shows one officer respond within seconds. According to the criminal complaint, she hits Garcia with pepper spray. She reportedly follows him to his cell to handcuff him as he was trying to flush the shank. Meanwhile, a handful of officers escort Byers out of the pod as he's clearly bleeding from the neck onto the stairs and the floor. Other camera angles show many more officers tend to Byers in the hallway before he's sent to the hospital.
Officer Downing was the supervisor inside an MDC pod in November when 2 inmates asked the guard to open a cell door to give another inmate some soup. After letting them in, Downing left his post to go check out what he thought was a fight inside that cell.
When he arrived at the cell, another inmate attacked him.
MDC says Jose Estrada threw that first punch, then tried to yank the officer's radio from his hip to keep him from calling for help.
Several inmates came from behind him to also attack him.
The corrections officer then had to run the gauntlet to get through that group of inmates, all of whom were throwing punches.
They wanted to assault an officer that day.
Officer Downing managed to escape with just some minor injuries, including some bruising to his face.
Facing an onslaught of charges, from sex trafficking and racketeering to transportation for prostitution, Diddy's legal battles have become a media spectacle. With his federal trial set for May 5th, every move he makes is scrutinized, not just as a celebrity, but as a man fighting to reclaim his freedom. His repeated denials and pleas of innocence stand in stark contrast to the mounting evidence and relentless legal maneuvers designed to keep him behind bars. Despite his status, he has been denied bail 3 times, each decision painting a grim picture of a future where even fame offers no sanctuary from the harsh realities of the justice system.
The complaint claims on the surface, each of these businesses served a legitimate purpose related to entertainment, music, and other subjects. But in reality, Combs, by and through himself and his agents, employees, and contractors, used these businesses to sexually assault, abuse, threaten, and coerce hundreds of individuals through sexual quid pro quo schemes, as well as to take advantage of individuals with impunity, thinking the victims would never seek recourse. Combs and his agents, employees, and contractors through these Combs businesses would tell victims, this is what it takes to be famous. What are you willing to do to become a star? And perform this sexual act, or else to coerce the victim into performing a non-consensual sexual act for the gratification of Combs and his cohorts. By the way, this is also key for the criminal charges that he faces, specifically the racketeering charge that he used his businesses and resources allegedly to lead and further a criminal enterprise that was engaged in sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, other alleged illegal activity.
A recent coordinated sweep at the detention center has only added fuel to the fire. During the operation, federal agents seized drugs, makeshift weapons, and a staggering number of electronic devices, tools that could easily be used to coordinate further violence or even tamper with evidence. These revelations, coming on the heels of violent incidents including fatal stabbings and brutal assaults, underscore a stark reality. The safety of even high-profile inmates is jeopardized by the systemic chaos within the facility. In this environment, every cry for help resonates, all the more tragically.
Action with the Bureau of Prisons' October 28, 2024 to November 1st, 2024 sweep of the Metropolitan Detention Center, the MDC. A BOP investigator, Investigator 1, photographed 19 pages of Combs' notes and sent them to the government's filter team. The filter team consists of AUSAs, these are Assistant United States Attorneys, who aren't involved in the investigation or prosecution of this case. The filter team redacted the notes and sent them to the case team. The case team consists of the agents and AUSAs investigating and prosecuting Combs. So let me start there. So yes, there was a raid at the MDC, the Metropolitan Detention Center, where currently Sean Combs is being locked up. Now, the government has always indicated that this raid was pre-planned, and it wasn't specifically about Sean Combs, whose unit was.
Diddy's troubles extend beyond the present, as his storied career remains shadowed by controversies that continue to haunt him. In 1991, a charity basketball game he co-hosted turned tragic when a deadly stampede claimed the lives of 19 teenagers, an event that forever marred his legacy.
On December 28, 1991, 9 young people died in a crowd stampede at a city college in New York City. A charity basketball game headlined by hip-hop stars Heavy D and Puff Daddy was to blame. Now, shortly after 6 p.m., according to eyewitness accounts, the crowd outside of the City University of New York broke one of the glass doors that was separating them from the lobby of the building. Now, despite the presence of at least 66 New York City cops, 38 city college campus security guards, and 20 private security guards hired by the event's promoters, the crowd was still able to surge through the doors and rush into the building shortly after 7 p.m. when the event finally got underway. Now, once inside of the lobby, the crowd rushed down a set of stairs leading to the gymnasium. At the bottom of those stairs were 4 swinging doors, 3 of them closed, that opened not into the gymnasium, but into a tight stairwell. Now, while the 3,000 strong crowd surged forward, those people who had reached the stairwell first were caught in a crush that would leave 8 dead on the scene and 29 others injured, one of whom would later die of her injury.
Fast forward to 1999, when a violent nightclub shooting, one that also involved his then-girlfriend Jennifer Lopez, cast a long shadow over his public image. More recently, former Bad Boy artist Moses Shine Barrow accused Diddy of orchestrating a setup that led to his decade-long incarceration after a club shooting, a claim that adds yet another layer of betrayal to an already tumultuous history.
It's absolutely set up to be the fall guy.
The self-proclaimed fall guy now speaking out in his own words. Almost 25 years since that infamous nightclub shooting during a night out with Sean Diddy Combs and his then-girlfriend Jennifer Lopez. 3 people were injured that night.
There's a narrative that still exists that you knowingly took the fall for Sean Combs.
Taking the fall means not snitching, not getting your friends in trouble. Even today, I wouldn't want to do anything to get anyone in trouble.
So they don't come to you and say, hey man, we need you to take this hit for Diddy.
No, I did that out of honor and integrity.
Sean Combs' representatives telling ABC News this evening in part, Mr. Combs categorically denies Mr. Barrow's allegations, including any suggestion that he orchestrated Mr. Barrow to take the fall or sacrificed him.
In the end, Diddy's anguished cry is more than a plea for help. It echoes a life upended by choices and a system that abandons its most notorious inmates. In a prison where violence is rampant and guards remain silent, even a formidable figure like Diddy must fend for himself. As his trial looms and past scandals resurface, each whispered secret and act of betrayal deepens the grim reality of his confinement. Will his desperate plea break through the silence, or will the cold corridors forever mute his call for justice? One thing is certain, his fight for survival carries consequences far beyond these walls.
Clients describe MDC as hell, as the worst conditions they've been in.
Lance A. Clark is a federal defense attorney who's been there many times.
Now, if the government is going to mandate that they are responsible for your well-being, they have to ensure the safety of your well-being.
Occupy the streets until they get heat!
In the winter of 2019, protests over a power outage left inmates without light or heat for a week in the cold.
I understand how cold it must be in those cells, and not to have any electricity, any lights, and to not be able to communicate with your family is just inhumane.
The prison has about 1,200 detainees and is the only federal prison in the nation's largest city. The DOJ shut down New York City's other federal jail, the Metropolitan Correctional Center, back in 2021, 2 years after Jeffrey Epstein died by suicide.